Great ships hung in the clouds, their metal skins glowing red with fire. The war between humans and the alien race had turned the world into smoke and ash. Every city was broken, every street filled with the sound of fear humans fought with. Everything they had. But the aliens were stronger, faster, and more advanced. To the alien race, humans were nothing more than wild animals. They believed humans only destroyed, only killed, and could never understand true honor in the eyes of the alien generals. Humanity was a mistake of the universe. But not all aliens believed this. Not completely. One warrior, tall and fierce, stood on the battlefield. His name was Kale. He had seen countless humans die in war. Yet something in him was restless, something he could not name on this night, under the ruined sky. Kale looked upon a single human soldier. The man was wounded, blood running down his arm. But his eyes were burning with something different. Not fear, not hate. Something stronger, something. Kale did not understand. The human should have run. He should have begged for life. But instead, he stood his ground, weapon shaking in his hand. His voice was weak, yet steady. "You can kill me," the human said. "But know this, my people will never stop, not because we are strong, but because we love." Kale froze. Love. That word, among his kind, love was considered a weakness, a distraction. But in the human's voice, it sounded like power. He had heard humans speak of love before. Love for land, love for family, love for honor. But this soldier's words felt different. They carried weight, they carried truth. The other aliens around Kale laughed at the soldier. They mocked him. They called humans fools who spoke of soft things in a world of fire. But Kale did not laugh. He felt something break inside him. Something he could not explain. The human soldier lowered his weapon. Instead of fighting, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small picture. It was torn, dirty from battle, but the image was clear. A woman and a child, smiling, his family. Kale's eyes narrowed. Why would a soldier carry such a thing into battle? Why would he risk his life? Not for victory, not for himself, but for people who were not even here. Kale could not understand, and yet, deep inside, he wanted to. The battlefield was silent for a moment. Even the wind seemed to stop. The soldier looked at Kale and whispered, "This love will never die." Kale's hand trembled on his weapon. For the first time in his long warrior life, he hesitated. He had killed many humans, but never before had one made him stop. Never before had one made him feel. What was this strange fire inside his chest? Why did he not want to strike? Why did this human's words echo in his mind? The soldier's legs gave way, and he fell to the ground, still clutching the picture, still whispering about love. Kale stepped forward, his shadow falling over the human. He could have ended it. He should have ended it, but instead, his weapon lowered. His voice shook as he whispered, "Human, what have you done?" The words escaped him before he could stop. The human's eyes closed, but a faint smile touched his lips. Even in pain, even in defeat, he smiled. Kale had seen warriors die with rage, with fear, with hate, but never like this, never with love. Moment burned into Kale's mind. It haunted him. It chased him in every silence. Why? Why would a human choose love over life? Why would they cling to such a fragile thing in the face of war? That night, Kale could not sleep. He stood on the cliffs above the battlefield, the smoke of war rising into the stars. He remembered the picture in the soldier's hand. He remembered the smile. He remembered the words. This love will never die. And for the first time, the great warrior of the alien race felt fear. Not fear of death, not fear of humans, but fear of the truth. Because if love was truly stronger than war, stronger than death, then maybe humans were not weak at all. Maybe they were something more, something greater. Kale's heart pounded as he looked at the stars. He whispered again, his voice trembling, "Human, what have you done?" The war was far from over, but something inside him had already changed forever. Asterisk, the smoke of war was still heavy in the air. Kale could not forget the soldier he had spared. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that torn picture, that smile. Those words, it was as if the human's voice had carved itself into his mind. Days passed, battles raged on, yet Cale felt different. He no longer looked at humans the same way. His people said humans were weak, blind creatures driven by hunger and fear. But Cale had seen something else. He had seen a man carry love into war, and it shook the very core of his belief. One night under a blood-red sky, Cale was sent on patrol near the ruins of an abandoned city. Shadows stretched across broken buildings, and the silence was sharp. That was when he heard it, a faint cry. It was not the roar of battle, it was softer, weaker, the sound of a wounded human. Cale followed the sound, his instincts torn between duty and something deeper. In the rubble of a shattered wall, he found him, a human soldier, barely alive. Chest rising slowly, blood stained his uniform, and his weapon lay far from his reach. But the strange part, Cale recognized him. It was the same soldier, the one who had shown him the picture, the one who had whispered, "This love will never die." Somehow, against all odds, he was still alive. Cale froze. He should have finished it. He should have called his unit. But instead, he stepped closer. The human looked up, his eyes half closed, weak but still burning with the same fire. "You." "Again," the soldier whispered, his voice faint. "Why didn't you kill me?" Cale could not answer. His throat felt tight, his hands heavy. He was a warrior, trained never to question, never to hesitate. Yet standing here, he felt like neither enemy nor soldier. He felt human. The soldier coughed, blood on his lips. He tried to sit up but failed. "You don't understand," he said softly. "We fight not only for victory, but for each other." His trembling hand reached into his pocket. Again, he pulled out the small torn picture. His family. He pressed it weakly against his chest, guarding it as if it were life itself. Cale's eyes narrowed. He could not look. Away, among his kind, warriors carried weapons, honors, scars, but no one carried a fragile image into war. No one held something so personal, so vulnerable. In the middle of death, Cale spoke at last, his voice deep and heavy. "Why? Why risk your life for something so fragile?" "It makes you weak," the soldier smiled faintly. "No, it makes me strong," he whispered. "I fight because I love them. That is why I will not stop." Cale felt his chest tighten. This man was broken, bleeding, barely alive. Yet his spirit felt unshakable. It was madness. It was impossible. And yet, it was real. Without knowing why, Cale reached down. He lifted the soldier carefully, carrying him on his back. Every step was heavy, every breath filled with conflict. If his commanders found out, Cale would be punished, maybe even executed. But still he walked. Something inside him whispered that this was not betrayal, it was truth. As Cale carried the soldier through the ruins, the human's weak voice spoke again. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Cale did not know the answer. Perhaps he was searching for it. Perhaps he needed to understand this strange thing humans called love. They reached a hidden corner in the ruins, far from the eyes of Cale's people. There, Cale set the soldier down gently. The human winced in pain but managed a weak laugh. "You're not like the others, are you?" Cale remained silent, staring at the stars above the broken city. For the first time in his life, he was not sure who he was anymore. That night, the warrior and the soldier did not fight. They talked, quietly, cautiously. The human spoke of earth, of green fields, oceans and skies untouched by war. He spoke of his family, his wife, his child waiting for him. Cale listened, his heart heavy, his mind full of questions. He had never seen earth, never known such bonds. In his world, warriors were born to fight, not to love. Yet here was proof that another way existed. As the fire of war burned in the distance, Cale felt a dangerous truth forming inside him. This human was not his enemy anymore. He was something else, something Cale could not name. When the soldier finally closed his eyes, drifting into sleep, Cale whispered into the night, "Human, "What have you done to me?" And though no one else could hear, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. The ruins became their secret. Kale returned again and again to the broken place where the soldier rested. Each time, he brought small things: water, medicine stolen from his own supplies, scraps of food. He told himself it was curiosity, nothing more, but deep inside, he knew it was something else. The soldier's wounds slowly healed. His strength returned little by little. At first, he could barely speak, but with each night, his voice grew stronger. He told Kale stories, stories of Earth, stories of laughter, sunlight, and the sound of children running in fields. Kale listened in silence. His people had no stories like this. Their tales were of war, conquest, and blood. But when the humans spoke, Kale felt something new. Hope, a strange, dangerous word among his kind. The human introduced himself at last. "My name is Daniel," he said, voice soft but steady. Kale repeated the name awkwardly, as if tasting it. Daniel, a name carried not with rank or honor, but with life. In return, Daniel asked, "What's yours?" Kale hesitated. Among his people, names were rarely shared with enemies, but this human no longer felt like an enemy. "My name is Kale," he said at last. Daniel smiled faintly. "And we are no longer strangers." From that night, something changed. They began to speak not as warrior and foe, but as two souls trapped in a war too large for them. Daniel spoke of music, something Kale had never heard. He hummed a broken tune, soft and low. Even in his weakness, his voice carried warmth. Kale found himself closing his eyes, listening as if it were a secret gift. In return, Kale spoke of the stars. He told Daniel how his people believed the stars were ancient fires of fallen warriors, each light a spirit watching over the living. Daniel listened with awe. "Then maybe one day," he whispered, "we will both be stars, watching together." The bond was dangerous. If Kale's people discovered his secret, he would be executed. If Daniel's army learned of it, Kale would be hunted. But still, night after night, they met, hidden in the ruins, bound by whispers and shared silence. One evening, rain fell across the broken city. Daniel struggled to stand, his body still weak. Kale moved quickly to steady him. Their eyes met. For a moment, the war felt far away. Daniel laughed softly. "Strange, isn't it? A human and an alien, talking like friends." Kale's throat tightened. He wanted to say more, but words failed him. Instead, he asked, "Why do you trust me? I could still kill you." Daniel's gaze was calm. "Because if you wanted me dead, I would already be gone," he said. "Trust begins when fear ends." Those words struck deeper than any blade. Kale had fought his entire life. Every breath had been ruled by fear, fear of weakness, fear of dishonor, fear of failure. Yet here was a fragile human teaching him something his own people never had. That strength could be born not from fear, but from trust. As the weeks passed, their secret bond grew. They laughed quietly at things Kale barely understood. They argued over stories, argued over the meaning of life, and sometimes, in silence, they simply sat together. Two enemies, yet no longer enemies. Two lives bound by something stronger than war. But with each passing day, the risk grew greater. Kale knew his absence was being noticed. Daniel knew his army was searching the ruins, the walls of their secret world were closing in, and though neither spoke it aloud, both felt the same question rise in their hearts. How long could this last? One night, as the fires of war glowed on the horizon, Daniel looked at Kale and whispered, "This bond. It is dangerous. If they find us, they will kill us both." Kale's jaw tightened. His voice was low, steady. "Then let them come. I will not end this. Not now." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, and in that silence, something unspoken was born, something neither had expected. A connection beyond friendship, beyond trust. A bond that was forbidden. A bond that could destroy them both. Kale looked away, his chest heavy. Daniel smiled faintly. The war raged on, but here, In the ruins, two hearts had begun to beat as one. And the universe itself seemed to whisper, "This love will never die." Asterisk, the ruins that once echoed with silence now held something far more dangerous. Cale and Daniel had crossed an invisible line. What began as mercy had turned into trust. What began as trust was now something deeper, something forbidden at first. Cale tried to ignore it. He told himself it was weakness, a sickness born of too many nights near the human. But the truth followed him everywhere. In every battle, when blades clashed and blood spilled, his mind drifted back to the ruins, back to Daniel's quiet smile, back to the voice that spoke of family, music, and hope. Daniel felt it too. He never said the word aloud, but it was there, in the way his eyes lingered when Cale looked away, in the way his laugh came softer now, as if only Cale deserved to hear it. Love, it was a simple word. Yet in war it was heavier than steel. They both knew the danger among Cale's people. To show love to an enemy was treason among Daniel's people. To care for an alien was betrayal, if discovered. Both would die, not as soldiers, but as traitors. And still, night after night, they returned to each other, drawn by something neither could control. One evening, Cale brought Daniel a piece of alien metal, smooth and glowing, faintly blue. It was part of his own armor. He pressed it into Daniel's hand, his voice rough. "In my world, this means bond. I should never give it away, but it belongs with you." Daniel stared at the fragment, his throat tight. He understood the risk. He understood what Cale was saying without words. Slowly, he pulled the torn picture from his pocket and handed it to Cale. "My world, my heart. If you carry this, then we are no longer divided." Cale held the picture with trembling hands, the smiling woman, the child, fragile humans frozen in paper. He should have felt nothing, but instead, he felt as if Daniel had given him the universe itself. The bond was no longer secret to themselves. It was no longer something they could hide in silence. They had chosen each other, even though it was madness. Yet fate has no mercy. One night, as Cale made his way back from the ruins, he was stopped by his commander. Sharp eyes studied him. "You have been gone too often, Cale. What are you hiding?" Cale's jaw tightened. For the first time in his life, he lied. "Scouting the ruins for human survivors," he said coldly. The commander studied him for a long moment, then nodded. But suspicion had already been planted. And suspicion in war grows quickly. Meanwhile, Daniel's people had begun whispering as well. Scouts had reported seeing movement in the ruins. They suspected spies. Daniel knew that soon, his own army might find him. And if they saw Cale at his side, there would be no mercy. The walls of their fragile world were closing in. Every meeting became sharper, heavier with fear. Every touch of eyes felt like it could be the last. Daniel spoke first one night, his voice low. "If they find out, they will kill you, Cale. You should leave me." Cale's hands clenched. He wanted to speak, but anger and pain burned inside him. Finally, he said, "Do not ask me to leave, Daniel. You are the only truth I have found in this war." Daniel's heart ached. He had never thought he would hear words like that from an alien warrior. And yet here they were, both caught in a storm of love and doom. The forbidden's bond grew stronger, not through grand declarations, but through small moments. The way Cale shielded Daniel from the cold wind. The way Daniel's voice softened when he spoke Cale's name. The way silence between them felt safer than any army. But war has no place for love, and destiny was already moving against them. Cale's commander began sending scouts to follow him. Daniel's army prepared a sweep of the ruins. Both sides were closing in. Neither knew how much time they had left. One night, as flames glowed in the distance, Cale whispered into the dark, "If this bond destroys us, then let it. I would rather fall with you than live without you." Daniel's eyes filled with tears he could not hold back. He reached for Cale's hand, his voice breaking. "This love, it will never die." And for that single moment, under the broken stars, they chose love over fear, even if the universe itself turned against them. The battlefield lay silent after Daniel's fall. Cale knelt in the ruins, holding the still body close. The picture lay between them, torn and stained with blood. The alien soldiers who had come to kill now stood frozen, for they had seen something greater than any weapon. They had seen love stronger than fear. The commander's fury turned to silence. Even he could not hide the unease in his eyes. For in Daniel's final act, something had shifted, something no army could undo. Cale lifted his face to the sky, tears burning in his eyes. He had no words, only a vow carved deep inside his soul. "This love will never die," he whispered, and the stars above seemed to answer. The soldiers retreated that night, not out of mercy, but out of confusion. What they had witnessed shook them. A human, weak in body, had faced an army and given his life not for power, not for glory, but for love. It was something their people had never believed possible, but now they had seen it with their own eyes. Cale buried Daniel in the ruins where they had first spoken. He placed the torn picture in Daniel's hands, and beside it, the glowing fragment of armor he had once given him. Two worlds bound together in death, two hearts bound beyond time. He did not speak of war, or honor or blood. He spoke only one promise: "I will carry you into every star, Daniel. You will not be forgotten." Years passed, the war dragged on. But Cale was no longer the same. He fought not as a servant of command, but as a voice. He spoke of the human who gave his life for love. He told both armies of Daniel's sacrifice. At first, they laughed, but the story spread. And with every telling, the laughter grew weaker, until it vanished, replaced by silence. Cale's name became legend among his people. The alien who defied his commander. The warrior who carried the memory of a human above the call of duty. But Daniel's name became eternal among both humans and aliens, whispered in stories as the one who changed everything. Children on Earth grew up hearing the tale of the soldier who carried a picture into battle. Alien hatchlings listened to the story of the human who stood unarmed against an army, and in every telling, one truth remained, that love, fragile and forbidden, had become greater than war. Cale lived long after the war ended, but never again did he fight with the same fire. For his heart belonged to a human who no longer walked the stars. When the elders asked him why he carried no family, no bloodline, he answered simply, "I had one, and that love will never die." On his final day, Cale walked alone into the field of stars. He lay down beneath the sky and closed his eyes. In his hand he held the same torn picture, now faded and worn, and with his last breath, he whispered the same words he had spoken long ago. "Human, what have you done?" When his people found him, they did not bury him in silence. Instead, they carved his story into stone. Not the battles he fought, not the enemies he killed, but the love he carried, the love that bound two worlds together, generations. Past, war faded into history, but the legend of Cale and Daniel did not fade. It grew. It lived in the hearts of both humans and aliens. A reminder that strength is not born only from blood and steel, but from something far more fragile and far more powerful in the end. The story was no longer about a human or an alien. It was about what they had become together. Two lives that defied war. Two souls that proved love could outlast even death, and across the stars, whispered in every tongue, the words lived on. This love will never die. The secret could not last forever, for weeks. Cale and Daniel had lived inside the fragile walls of their hidden bond. They had believed the ruins would protect them, but war always finds cracks, and suspicion always grows sharper than blades. One night, Cale returned from battle later than usual. The ruins were quiet, the air thick with the smell of ash. Daniel sat waiting, his picture clutched in his hand. When Cale entered, Daniel smiled faintly. "You came back," he whispered. Cale nodded, but his heart was heavy. He had felt the eyes of his commander too close, too sharp. Something was wrong. He did not speak it aloud. Instead, he sat beside Daniel, and for a brief moment, the war outside felt far away. But the silence broke when heavy footsteps echoed through the ruins. Kale's blood ran cold. It was not patrol, it was his commander. The alien leader stepped into the shadows, his eyes burning. "Kale," he growled. "So this is the truth you've been hiding." His gaze shifted to Daniel. Weak but defiant. "A human," he spat. "You disgrace your blood, your honor, your people." Daniel struggled to rise, his breath ragged. He reached for his weapon, but Kale's hand stopped him gently. This was not a fight he could win. The commander's voice thundered. "Kill him, Kale. Prove your loyalty. End this weakness before I end you both." Kale's chest tightened. His weapon felt heavier than it ever had before. The man who had raised him, trained him, trusted him now demanded blood. The human he had grown to love stood beside him, silent, waiting. The choice tore him apart. Daniel's voice was soft, trembling. "Do it," he whispered. "Better it be you than them." Kale's eyes widened. The words stabbed deeper then. "Any blade," Daniel smiled faintly. "You gave me peace when I should have had none. If this is the end, let it be with you." Kale's hands shook. He raised his weapon, but his heart screamed against it. The commander watched with cold satisfaction. But Kale's voice broke through the silence, low and raw. "No." The commander's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Kale dropped his weapon to the ground. "I will not kill him," he said. "I will not betray what I have found." The commander's roar shook the ruins. "You have betrayed your people, Kale. You choose an enemy over your blood." Kale stood tall, his body trembling. "I choose truth," he said firmly. "I choose love." The commander's face twisted with rage. He drew his own blade, stepping forward. "If you will not kill him, then you will die with him." In that moment, Daniel moved, with what little strength remained in his body. He threw himself in front of Kale. The commander's blade struck deep, and Daniel cried out. Kale caught him as he fell, the picture slipping from his hand onto the broken floor. "Daniel!" Kale's voice shattered the night. He held the human close, blood staining his hands. Daniel's eyes fluttered, his voice weak. "Human. Alien. None of it matters," he whispered. "What matters is this. What we found." The commander raised his blade again, but Kale's fury erupted. With a roar, he struck, disarming his leader. The two clashed in a storm of steel and rage. Kale fought not for honor, not for war. He fought for Daniel, for love. The battle was brutal. Stone cracked, sparks flew. At last, Kale drove the commander back, his blade pressed to his leader's throat. The commander's eyes widened with disbelief. "You would kill me for him? For a human?" Kale's voice was steady. "I would live for him." He did not finish the strike. Instead, he let his commander fall into the shadows. Broken but alive, he turned back to Daniel, who lay trembling, his hand reaching weakly for the picture. Kale pressed it into his palm. Tears burned his eyes as he whispered, "Human, what have you done? You've made me choose, and I will never turn back." Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile. Even in pain, even in betrayal, he smiled. And Kale knew then, this love was no longer forbidden. It was destiny. But destiny always has a price, and the war around them had already begun to close its jaws. Asterisk, the ruins burned with silence after the clash. Kale knelt on the broken floor, Daniel's blood warm against his hands. The human's breathing was shallow, every rise of his chest a battle of its own. Kale had fought 1,000 wars, but never had he felt fear like this, not fear of death, but fear of losing the one thing he could not replace. "Stay with me," Kale whispered, voice shaking. Daniel's eyes opened faintly, a weak smile forming. "You fight like a storm, but your hands tremble for me." Kale's throat tightened. He had no words, only the weight of love and helplessness. Before he could answer, the sound of marching filled the ruins. Dozens of alien soldiers arrived, their weapons glowing in the dark. Behind them came Kale's wounded commander, fury burning in his eyes. "There he is, the traitor. Seize him, kill the human." Kale rose to his feet, standing tall over Daniel. His blade flashed, his voice thundered. "You will not touch him." The soldiers hesitated. They had never seen Kale defy an order, but now his stance was not one of a warrior bound by command. It was something greater. The commander's voice roared again. "You choose death, Kale. Then die with him." The soldiers surged forward. Kale fought like a storm of fire, his blade cutting through shadows. Every strike was fueled not by duty, but by love. He defended every inch of space around Daniel, yet no matter how strong he was, they were too many. The weight of the war pressed down. Step by step, Daniel struggled to rise, but his wounds chained him to the ground. He watched Kale fight, blood and fire around him. And he understood the truth. If Kale kept fighting, both of them would die here. The war would erase everything they had found. Daniel's hand closed around the fragment of alien armor Kale had given him. Bond, that was the meaning Kale had spoken. And now Daniel knew how to honor it. With all the strength left in his broken body, he pulled himself up. Kale turned, shock in his eyes. "Daniel, no!" But Daniel was already moving. He pushed past Kale, stepping into the path of the advancing soldiers. His voice, weak but fierce, rang across the ruins. "If blood must be spilled tonight, let it be mine." The soldiers froze. Even the commander's rage was halted for a moment. A human, fragile, wounded, stood before an army with nothing but a broken piece of armor in his hand. Kale's heart shattered. He rushed forward, trying to shield him. But Daniel's hand pressed against his chest, stopping him. Their eyes met, and in that look was everything. "Trust, love, goodbye, Kale," Daniel whispered. "You gave me more than I thought possible. You showed me I wasn't alone. Now let me give you something back." "No," Kale's voice broke. "Don't do this. We can run. We can fight." "We can." Daniel shook his head gently. "You can fight. I can love, and love is sometimes sacrifice." With those words, Daniel stepped forward, his broken body glowing with courage greater than any weapon. The commander sneered. "You think one human's life matters?" Daniel's voice cut through the air, steady. "It matters to him, and that is enough." The soldiers moved as one, weapons rising. Kale screamed, his roar shaking the ruins. "Daniel!" And then, in an instant that seemed to last forever, Daniel threw himself into the fire of blades. The strike that should have killed Kale instead tore through Daniel's chest. He fell into Kale's arms, blood running like rivers. Kale held him close, his voice breaking. "Human, what have you done?" Daniel's lips trembled into the faintest smile. His voice was only a breath. "I kept my promise. This love will never die." His hand slipped from Kale's, the picture falling once more to the ground. His body grew still, his smile frozen in the silence of eternity. Kale's scream shook the night. It was not the roar of a warrior, it was the cry of a heart torn apart. The soldiers faltered, fear rising in their eyes. For in that moment, Kale was no longer a soldier. He was something else, something greater. With Daniel's blood on his hands, Kale rose. His eyes burned with grief and fire. The stars above seemed to weep. The universe itself felt heavy. And every heart that saw him knew the war would never be the same again.